Hi, my name is Eben Ray, and I'm on the line with Winston Shrout. Winston Shrout Solutions in Commerce, www.wssic.com. Coming up on August 25th from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, Winston's latest webinar is going to be on the pledge. Let me start off by asking you, Mr. Shrout, would you define the word pledge?
Oh, sure. Basically, a pledge is a special kind of a pawn. And so to understand what a pledge is, perhaps I should go back over the concept of what a pawn is. Now, I think a lot of people are familiar with the local pawn shop. Perhaps some have used it from time to time for whatever reason. But in any event, if you're familiar with a pawn, then there's certain terms that come up, such as bailor, bailee, and some of these kinds of things. And these are concepts, that are instrumental to understanding this. Now, on a typical pawn, if someone wants to turn an asset into cash, the pawn shop is a ready vehicle to do that. And so you would take the asset. Let's say, for instance, it's a radio. And so you take the radio to the pawn shop. Now, in that relationship, you would be the bailor, and the fellow that's running the pawn shop would be the bailee. So you take the asset as the bailor to the bailee. The bailee does an assessment of the value of the radio, keeping in mind that he might have to resell the radio to recover on his loan. And so once a number is agreed to between the bailor and the bailee, then the bailee takes possession of the radio, and he turns over to the bailor a certain amount of cash and also a receipt. Now, along with the agreement on the contract between the two parties, there is also an interest rate which is agreed upon. So when the bailor leaves the pawn shop with cash, he also has a pawn ticket or a receipt, and also there is a certain amount of interest which is anticipated upon completion of the contract. Now that's a simple pawn. So let's get into what a pledge would be. As I mentioned, a pledge is a special kind of a pawn in this regard. But by using the pledge system, the actual asset itself is not taken to the pawn shop, but rather the title to the asset is taken by the bailor to the bailee, and rather than the radio being passed across the counter, the title to the radio is taken by the bailee. And so again, this facilitates the transaction on this basis that you're no longer having to haul an item into the pawn shop, but rather you take a piece of paper which is the title to the asset. Now, certainly, if the bailee is willing to accept the title as a pledge, then the bailor has to guarantee that he will keep the asset, such as the radio, in good, safe working order. See, that's another responsibility that comes from the use of the pledge. So, this then is the basis of how this works. Now, when the bailor wants to redeem the asset, whether it be the radio or whether it be the title to the radio, he takes back to the bailee or to the pawn shop the agreed upon money plus the interest, along with the receipt. You understand that the receipt is a cash receipt. And so he goes back to the bailee with his original loan of money. He takes back in the amount of interest that has been agreed upon, and he takes back the cash receipt as proof of the money. And when he surrenders those things back to the bailee passes back either the asset or the title to the asset, which is unencumbered. In other words, the title is now lien-free. So this is how a basic pawn works. This is how a basic pledge works. Do you have any questions, or is that easily understood?
Well, you were just making me think about the title to my car, and that I have, and it's in somebody else's hands. I have the responsibility to keep it running and do all of that, but yet somebody can snatch it away for parking tickets.
Well, correct. When you start talking about automobiles, the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, and using this pledge system, it's a little bit more convoluted than this particular thing that I've described here, but certainly I wanted to put across the thought process of how a pledge works, because as we get back into other situations, other than, the local pawn shop, when we start talking about big government and how it is they've been able to take control of the assets of America, which title has been pledged to the federal debt, then it starts to ring a few bells and perhaps get a few people angry.
Well, here's the question then. Title to the assets of America. What kind of assets are we talking about? Are we talking about just land?
No. We're talking about the whole gamut. But more important than the land. Well, I shouldn't say more important than the land. As I've tried to emphasize in the past, people are simply walking dirt.
That's new.
I know that sounds silly.
Well, from ash we come, and from dust we will return, right?
Absolutely, which demonstrates that the mortal existence is only an illusion.
Very good.
We came from somewhere, we're here for a short period of time, and then we go on. And so this mortal plane that we're existing on and talking right now is the illusion, and the spiritual realm is the reality because it is eternal in nature. But
I am with you there, sir. Yes.
For the present time, we're stuck in our mortal existence, and so all these things that we're trying to deal with to help people take back control of their dirt, is for that purpose. Now, you understand that the purpose of Solutions in Commerce and many other educators and websites and so forth that have been put up have been for the purpose of freeing people's minds so that they could operate in this present circumstance, with a certain amount of freedom. I mean, that's a word everybody likes to hear. I'm not really sure that's the right word. I very seldom use that word. Well, but as a catchword, I think a lot of people are familiar with that term.
Well, sir, you do give people the opportunity to have freedom of choice to live a more than just human being life, but a fuller life by
Sure.
having knowledge of how to proactively react to circumstances and to,
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah. See, this planet was set up as a free will planet,
Yes, sir.
and you cannot have free will if the correct choice is not available. I mean, you can have 100 options, but you cannot exercise free will unless one of the options is the correct answer. And so some of the charlatans on the planet have worked to remove the right answer. And so people are stuck because they simply don't have the option of choosing the right thing. So that's what we've been involved in, is opening up a little bit of education for the benefit of the people, so that they have the opportunity to make the right choice if that's what they want.
Well, that is a very loving, modest statement from you to sit there and say that you've opened up a little bit of information, because your webinars that you've been having and all of your workshops, Winston, are opening up the universe to people, right?
Well, that's what we're trying to do.
Yes. And let me remind folks, you get to get on this train of freedom coming up on August 25th. You get to do it virtually, too, by joining Winston on his amazing webinars, August 25th from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. Call 503-538-7100, 503-538-7100. Say that you heard this interview, this good, clean, fun introduction with Winston and myself, and get a discount. Just make sure and call in. And so we really hope that you tune in for Winston's latest webinar, What is a Pledge? When we left, we were talking about the ideas of the title of the assets of America are pledged. What constitutes assets of America, or the title to them being pledged, and to whom?
Well, let's go back and analyze just for a moment the concept of what a title is.
Oh, yes.
I personally am very careful about the use of titles because the use of titles is what creates the fictions. So I'm very careful. I mean, about as far as I go will be Mr. or Mrs. just out of respect. But I'm very, very careful about when and where I would actually use a title. For this reason, is that the use of titles puts you right back into the feudal system.
Yes.
Now, I'll tell you how that is. Way back when, we got King John to blame for it, I guess. Back in 1213, King John, who apparently had some glitch in his moral conscience. What was wrong with that fellow, I don't know. But he made a deal with the Vatican, with the Pope, in regards to forgiveness of his perceived sins. In consequence of that, he gave over to the Vatican his kingdom. Now, in 1215, the lords, the Knights Templars in particular, were not happy with John when they found out what he had done. And so as a result of that, we have the guarantees that are contained in the Magna Carta, which circumvent the treaty and agreement that John had made with the Vatican, and so we use that from time to time. But let's talk about the results of that. And that was when someone in the kingdom wanted the use of land, they would go to the king and say, hey, I want this 100 acres over here, for instance. And the king would say, okay, I'll give you the use of the 100 acres in exchange for. There were three conditions that were put upon the use of the land. Number one was night service, which, in other words, the party receiving the use of the land, you can call them a baron or an earl or a lord or whatever. I don't know what you call them, folks.
Very good, sir.
Yeah.
The nobility, right?
In some respects,
right.
I mean, they were made into nobility by the use of the land.
Yes, sir.
And so in consequence of that agreement, they agreed to night service, which, in other words, they had to supply, X amount of nights if the king decided to go to war.
Okay.
So that was condition number one. And then the other two conditions were rent and taxes. They had to agree to pay a rent for the use of the land. And number three, they had to agree to a tax upon the product, that they were going to create with the use of the land. So those three things were conditions upon receiving a title. Now, let's get back into our present world and look at all the things, whether it be real estate, land, houses, automobiles, refrigerators,
right,
or whatever. Everything that we have comes with a title.
Yes.
Now, if that's the case, and so if you have been granted by the king the use of land or whatever, what are the three things that the king requires of you under the feudal system? Number one is knight or military responsibilities, or the support of the military. Number two, rent. And everybody who's ever signed any kind of mortgage agreements and deeds of trust and all those kind of things, look right straight on there, and what does it say that you are? It says you're a tenant.
Even if you have a mortgage, sir?
Sure. Look on all the papers that come out of those mortgages. They'll all list you as a tenant. Okay, and so along with the military or the support of the military, the fact that you're a tenant, which means you have to pay rent, there also comes the obligation of taxation from the product that you actually create. So this is one of the ways that the guys in charge, the government, the king, or however you want to call them, this is one of the ways that they have completely encumbered the people and all of the assets that the people use and all of the assets that the people produce. So the whole system that we're operating with is a total feudal system.
It's still a feudal system.
Why do you think the government was so adamant about going through all the colonies and all the new land acquisitions and so forth and so on, and setting up title offices?
But how did they, in a sense, capture? Who was it that captured this land that then they were able to convey the title to? Who actually owns the land that then titled it to?
That's the beautiful thing. No one can own land. But that's good, because who owns the earth? The Scripture says the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, and they that dwell therein. Now, so who's the owner?
The Lord.
Okay, so who's the usurper? The government.
Okay, or the church?
The church, the government, or the powers that be. See, the native people who lived here before the crazy Europeans showed up, they realized they could not own the land. They could not own their mother. I mean, they all had a belly button, for crying out loud, so they knew that they were created beings. And so they never gave the thought, more than 2 seconds of who owns the land, because they knew they couldn't own it.
Well,
it's the same thing today. You can't own land.
Wow.
But you can be a steward upon the land. Now, if you want to acquiesce to the title system and go back into the feudal, then rather than being a steward, now all of a sudden you're a tenant, and you owe rent and taxes, plain and simple.
Well, your webinar is going to be absolutely fascinating because, I mean, really to trace down the title, the actual asset, and that those assets might even be closer to home because don't they have something called human resources? Does that mean we are a class of asset that is being leveraged? All of this and more, you are going to be able to interact with Winston Shrout, www.wssic.com, Winston Shrout, solutionsincommerce.com. His next webinar is coming up on August 25th. It's going to be from 9 a.m. to noon. You call 503-538-7100. 503-538-7100. And this webinar, it's titled, What is a Pledge? And when we were getting ready to speak about this, I was thinking that Winston was talking about the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, but no, there is so much more. It's not just oath of office. It's actually the transfer of title of assets, and some of it might be a piece of you. And so it's going to be absolutely fascinating. We hope that you call and just get back on that train of freedom, of all this amazing knowledge that's being handed down to you. So, Winston, somebody being a part of your webinar, when they walk away, what do you hope their abilities will be from knowing this kind of information?
Peace of mind.
And what is the answer? What is the what's lifted from them, or what will they be empowered to understand by learning about the idea of pledging?
Well, in essence, knowledge will set you free.
Yes.
And so once you understand the situation, you can better prepare for eventualities. You can deal or you can block attempts of some of these things.
Very good.
For instance, there's been a great deal of emphasis, certainly since 2008, there's been a great deal of excitement in the country and across the planet, I might add, about these ridiculous mortgage situations that keep popping up and how the banks and the corporations have been throwing people out of their homes onto the street for profit and gain.
Right.
And so, once you understand, there are so many buzzwords and catchphrases that have gotten into people's minds erroneously. One of them is the American dream, own your own home. Hey, give me a break here.
You think that's erroneous?
Well, of course it is. You can't own a home.
Oh, okay, you can control it, but you can't own it.
Yeah, you can be the steward.
The steward.
Most people find themselves falling into the category of a tenant.
Now, but most of the people, who are the people that don't?
Well, I think, one of the things, and I'll say this, rather glibly or perhaps tongue-in-cheek, I don't know which one. But, one of the things that knowledge has done for me is that I realize, number one, that this is the illusion we're living in. I can recognize the fictions. I can recognize the frauds. And in consequence of that, I do not allow myself to get drawn into those circumstances. Now, the biggest fraud, the biggest fiction that have plagued the people on the planet is the concept of debt. And we have worked overtime to try to expose that fiction and that fraud so that people can get free of the illusion. And if nothing else, in your lifetime, would you not like to be able to see things as they really are?
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Now, whether or not an individual can completely rid themselves of those items is in question, and so that's what we teach people to do. But wouldn't it be nice if you wake up in the morning and say, hey, I know what's going on, and today I am not going to fall victim to that.
I love it, sir. It's prescriptive.
Is that not freedom?
That is freedom, sir. Because you know what? There's always stuff flying in the air, and knowing how to deflect it or not even come in contact with it, that's the power that you are giving people the choice to embrace, and that's a beautiful thing, sir. Really is.
Yeah. We just, like I say, we're just trying to do our part. I think that as a teenager, I started to analyze what was going on in my world, and a wise teacher had taught me about freedom of choice. And I was probably 16 years old when I learned this, and that was you can't have freedom of choice unless the right choice is available.
There you go.
And so many times you have to scratch around and dig deep and so forth to find what that right answer is, because it's not being taught, it's not being exposed in our present world. You have to go and look for it. But, that's good, because once you get that pearl of great price, then you treasure it because you have worked for the knowledge, and so it has meaning, it has value to you when you find it.
Yes.
So that's basically why I've turned to education and giving seminars is to, number one, expose the fiction and the fraud, but also to point people on a journey so they can find that pearl of great price. And once they have found it, because of their effort, not because of mine, but because of their effort, their labors, they will treasure it for the value that it actually has.
Well, the wonderful thing, sir, and I can attest to it, is that when you are on this search for knowledge and understanding, you come across angels. And that can be a discovery, too. Discovering folks like you, Mr. Shrout. And so
I'm not an angel. I'm a man.
I know, but you know what? You're being a higher conscious man, and that's great. And,
well, that's what we're moving towards, Eben. As you've listened to the various things that are happening around us, the effort as we go into the age of Aquarius is to raise the vibrational frequencies of the people so they can reach a higher level of understanding and comprehension.
Yes.
And you can't really, it's a hindrance, I'll put it that way. It's a hindrance to raising your vibrational frequencies if you're burdened with the illusion.
Yes.
So we're trying to pop that bubble, expose the illusion for what it is, give people a little bit of breathing room so they can, work out what they need to do to arrive at this new age of enlightenment. And we have many, many light workers across the planet who are laboring day in and day out to bring these things to the people. And I'm kind of when you talk about being a light worker, I'm kind of down into the mud hole trying to stir things up a little bit, but. So I don't know if I'd be called a light worker so much as a person who's trying to, extending a washcloth and a little bit of soap to folks so they can clean themselves up.
Well, I'm telling you, that's bringing light, sir.
It is.
Just one light in a cave, sir. And so that is just the I'm so thankful and I'm so happy to tell people about what you are doing at your site, www.wssic.com, Winston Shrout Solutions in Commerce. All you have to do is dial 503-538-7100, 503-538-7100. Mention this lovely, interview, Winston, with Eben, and get a discount. I'm so honored. And this upcoming webinars on August 25th is What is a Pledge? And this was just a tickle to something very deep. And you always know it when Winston, brings his webinars on. Get a couple of pens, nice big pad of paper, sit back, enjoy, and learn.
Great. We know it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Eben. You have such a wonderful voice to talk to. Have you ever thought about a career in radio broadcasting?
Oh, no, I just like to sit around and I just love to sit around and yammer with great minds such as yours, Mr. Shrout.
Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you because you have just such a lovely voice, and I know that the people that listen to you are very well fascinated with your speech as well.
Well, you know it, sir. I am in service, and I just appreciate very much being able to help you get your message out and to let people know of such an amazing resource you are doing with solutions. Hello, this is the time, and just thank you for your pioneering work.
Well, we're just trying to help out a little bit we can, and I think that we've been able to affect the lives of many people. And that's what we wanted to do. And rather than the radio being passed across the counter, the title to the radio is taken by the bailee. And so, again, this facilitates the transaction on this basis that you're no longer having to haul an item into the pawn shop, but rather you take a piece of paper, which is the title to the asset. Now, certainly, if the bailee is willing to accept the title as a pledge, then the bailor has to guarantee that he will keep the asset, such as the radio, in good, safe working order. See, that's another responsibility that comes from the use of the pledge. So, this then is the basis of how this works. Now, when the bailor wants to redeem the asset, whether it be the radio or whether it be the title to the radio, he takes back to the bailee, or to understanding this. Now, on a typical pawn, if someone wants to turn an asset into cash, the pawn shop is a ready vehicle to do that. And so you would take the asset. Let's say, for instance, it's a radio. And so you take the radio to the pawn shop. Now, in that relationship, you would be the bailor, and the fellow that's running the pawn shop would be the bailee. So you take the asset as the bailor to the bailee. The bailee does an assessment of the value of the radio, keeping in mind that he might have to resell the radio to recover on his loan. And so once a number is agreed to between the bailor and the bailee, then the bailee takes possession of the radio, and he turns over to the bailor a certain
Hi, my name is Eben Ray, and I'm on the line with Winston Shrout. Winston Shrout Solutions in Commerce, www.wssic.com. Coming up on August 25th from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, Winston's latest webinar is going to be on the pledge. Let me start off by asking you, Mr. Shrout, would you define the word pledge?
Oh, sure. Basically, a pledge is a special kind of a pawn. And so to understand what a pledge is, perhaps I should go back over the concept of what a pawn is. Now, I think a lot of people are familiar with the local pawn shop. Perhaps some have used it from time to time for whatever reason. But in any event, if you're familiar with a pawn, then there's certain terms that come up, such as bailor, bailee, and some of these kinds of things. And these are concepts, that are instrumental to the pawn shop. The agreed upon money plus the interest, along with the receipt. You understand that the receipt is a cash receipt. And so he goes back to the bailee with his original loan of money. He takes back in the amount of interest that has been agreed upon, and he takes back the cash receipt as proof of the money. And when he surrenders those things back to the bailee passes back either the asset or the title to the asset, which is unencumbered. In other words, the title is now lien-free. So this is how a basic pawn works. This is how a basic pledge works. Do you have any questions, or is that easily understood?
Well, you were just making me think about the title to my car, and that I have, and it's in somebody else's hands. I have the
amount of cash and also a receipt. Now, along with the agreement on the contract between the two parties, there is also an interest rate which is agreed upon. So when the bailor leaves the pawn shop with cash, he also has a pawn ticket or a receipt, and also there is a certain amount of interest which is anticipated upon completion of the contract. Now that's a simple pawn. So let's get into what a pledge would be. As I mentioned, a pledge is a special kind of a pawn in this regard. But by using the pledge system, the actual asset itself is not taken to the pawn shop, but rather the title to the asset is taken by the bailor to the bailee